Jalen didn't have much. A tiny wooden house, a half-broken stove, and a field full of weeds. But it was quiet, far from the noise of the cities and far from the war. He liked it that way. Every morning he woke with the sun, cooked simple food, and talked to no one. That was his peace. But peace doesn't last forever. The ground shook. He first thought it was an earthquake. Plates on his shelf rattled and dust fell from the ceiling. But when he stepped outside, he saw it wasn't the earth. It was boots. Hundreds, no, thousands of metal boots marching across the hills. Ships hovered low in the sky, casting shadows over his fields. Armored giants walked between rows of trees carrying weapons that hummed with blue energy. Jalen stood still, barefoot in the dirt. He didn't run. Where would he go? Then something even stranger happened. From the sky, a large figure dropped down, landing with a heavy thud that cracked the ground. She stood taller than the others. Much taller. 7 meters at least. Her skin was blue like twilight, her eyes bright like morning stars, and her armor bore strange glowing marks. She walked forward carefully, each step shaking the boards of his porch. Jalen didn't flinch. She knelt. The giantess bent one knee and lowered her head toward him, her expression soft but powerful. "I have returned," she said, her voice deep but kind. "You saved me once. I am yours." Jalen blinked. He didn't remember saving anyone. Behind her, the army stopped marching. Soldiers froze mid-step. Robots paused. 1,000 eyes turned toward the tiny cabin in the middle of nowhere. His cabin. Jalen looked back at the kneeling giantess. She was real. Her armor was scratched and burned, proof of battles fought. Her braids fell neatly over her shoulders, and her smile was one of both respect and something else. Trust. Deep trust. "I don't understand," Jalen said. "You pulled me from the wreck. You bandaged my arm. You gave me water. I was broken, and you helped me when I had nothing." "That was you?" he asked. He remembered now. Months ago, during a rainstorm, he'd found a strange woman in the woods, wounded and half-conscious. He thought she was just another lost traveler. She never told him who she was. "Yes," she said, "and now I serve. Your enemies are my enemies. Your orders are law." He looked at the army behind her. Hundreds of warriors, machines, and ships, all waiting, all watching him. The old wooden door behind him creaked in the wind. His tiny home was surrounded. "Why are they here?" he asked. "To protect you," she said. "If you command it, we will burn this world. If you wish peace, we will lay down arms. But no one touches you without my permission." Jalen rubbed the back of his neck. He'd grown beans and carrots all year. He didn't even own a gun. Now the biggest army he'd ever seen was kneeling in his yard. "Do I have a choice?" he asked. She nodded. "Always, but choose wisely. War is coming, whether you want it or not. If you stand alone, they will crush you. If you stand with me, you will never be alone again." Jalen looked at the sky. The ships hummed above like waiting birds. The wind carried dust and tension. His quiet life was over. But maybe, just maybe, something bigger had already begun. Jalen had never felt so small. Not just because the giantess knelt before him, but because the whole galaxy seemed to suddenly know his name. One moment he was a quiet man in the middle of nowhere. Now he was standing in front of thousands of armored beings waiting for his word. He stepped back slowly, feeling the rough wood beneath his bare feet. His mouth was dry. "I'm not a leader," he said quietly. "I'm not even a soldier." The giantess looked up at him. "You were a healer when I needed one." That was enough. Her voice was calm, steady, but her eyes held something deeper. Loyalty. Pain. A promise. Jalen remembered more now. The night he found her was cold and wet. She had fallen hard from the sky in a broken pod, her armor damaged, her face bruised. He thought she might die. He dragged her into his shed, built a fire, and stayed awake all night watching her breathe. She hadn't spoken then. Not a word. But she watched him with those same glowing eyes. And now here she was, tall enough to touch the roof beams if she stood, kneeling like a knight before a king. The army behind her waited in silence. No shouts, no movement, just stillness and pressure like a held breath. "What's your name?" Jalen asked. "I am called Alira," she said. "First sentinel of the Thorax's vanguard. But to you I am simply Alira." He nodded slowly. "And why are you here, really?" She looked through the cabin walls toward the distant hills. "Because enemies followed me. Because they saw I cared for you. And now they want to use you to break me." Jalen's hands curled into fists without thinking. So I'm bait. You were. Until I came back. He paced the room, heart beating faster. And now what? You bring an army to my door? What do you expect me to do? Rule them? I expect you to live, Alira said softly. Freely, safely, and I will make that possible. She stood then, slowly rising to her full height. Boards creaked. The sunlight hit her armor, making it shine like steel in starlight. Her voice changed. Louder now, firm and clear. Prepare the perimeter, she ordered. Shield the cabin. Hold defensive formation. The soldiers outside responded immediately. Movements began. Shields activated. Mechs stomped into place. Drones zipped overhead. The air filled with motion, but none of it was rushed. It was organized, controlled, trained. Jalen stepped to the doorway and watched in silence. The entire field had turned into a fortress within minutes. His home was now the center of a war zone. He looked up at her again. Are you really doing this for me? I owe you a debt, she said. And in my people's way, that debt must be honored fully. Your kindness saved me. Now I return that gift. Jalen didn't know what to say. He was no hero. No warrior. He hadn't done anything special. Just a warm blanket, some clean water, and a quiet place to heal. But to her, that had been everything. A soft buzzing sound came from above. A scout drone hovered low, its signal flashing red. Incoming, said one of the soldiers outside. Unidentified vessels approaching fast. Alira's hand went to her blade. The enemy is near. Jalen stared into the sky where dark shapes began to appear beyond the clouds. He wasn't ready. He wasn't trained. But somehow, standing beside her, he didn't feel afraid. Not yet. The clouds shifted. Not because of the wind, but because of the ships. They came fast. Sharp black vessels like knives in the sky. At least 20 of them. More followed. They flew low, cutting through the clouds like shadows with wings. Their engines screamed, not like Jalen's old world ships, but something darker, heavier. Alira turned her head toward the noise. Her hand stayed on her sword. She didn't blink. They're early, she said. Who are they? Jalen asked. The Raw Order, she answered. Mercenaries, assassins, and slavers. Jalen felt the words hit his chest like stone. And they're here for me? They were after me first, Alira said, her voice low. But now they've learned your name. They'll try to take you, to control me. Outside, the soldiers of the Theraxis vanguard moved quickly. Mechs raised their weapons. Drones scanned the sky. The cabin itself began to shift as a silent energy shield formed just above the roof, invisible to the eye until it shimmered once like heat in the air. Jalen stepped out of the doorway, bare feet on the dirt again. He looked around. What used to be open farmland was now filled with armored giants standing ready for war. Should I hide? He asked. Alira shook her head. No, if they see you run, they'll press harder. But if you stand strong even for a moment, they'll doubt. He swallowed hard. I'm not strong like you. You are, she said. You just haven't needed to be. Until now. A warning alarm echoed across the field. One of the RAL ships fired a plasma shot into the ground far beyond the defense line. Dirt exploded. Birds scattered from trees in panic. Test shot, one soldier said. They're measuring range. Alira stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Jalen. Her armor glowed at the seams as battle mode activated. Runes lit up along her arms and legs, pulsing with blue light. The energy around her shifted. Jalen looked up at her. She seemed even taller now. Alira, he said quietly, you don't have to die for me. She looked down at him, calm and certain. Then don't let me. He didn't fully understand what that meant, but something inside him clicked. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was duty. Or maybe it was the strange warmth in his chest when she said his name like it mattered. A voice boomed across the battlefield, broadcast from the RAL fleet. Turn over the human, it said, or we will take him by force. This is your only warning. The soldiers of the vanguard didn't move. Neither did Alira. They know you're here, she said. They think you're weak. That's how they win. Fear. Jalen took a deep breath. The air smelled like burnt dust and tension. He clenched his fist. What do I do? He asked her. Alira didn't smile, but her eyes softened. You speak? To who? To them. Jalen stared at the enemy ships. He could barely see the pilots inside, but he could feel their presence. Watching. Judging. He stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud. It shook a little, but it carried. "I'm not yours," he said to the sky. "I don't belong to you. If you want to fight, then fight. But you won't find fear in this home." The field fell silent. Then Alira drew her sword. It made no sound, but the light from it burned across the sky like a second sun. "The master has spoken," she said. The war had begun. The moment Jalen finished speaking, the air changed. The ground vibrated. The sky, once bright, began to dim as enemy warships formed a tight circle above his home. Red targeting lights scanned the field. The Rahl fleet had heard him, and now they answered. The first attack came fast. A laser blast ripped through the clouds, aimed directly at the cabin. But before it could hit, a wall of glowing energy rose like a shield dome around the house. The beam struck it, flared, and vanished with a boom that echoed across the hills. "Shields holding," one of the vanguard soldiers called out. Alira didn't move. She stood tall, sword raised, eyes locked on the enemy. "Return fire," she said. The Thrax's vanguard responded as one. Cannons fired from behind the cabin. Beams of blue light tore into the sky, striking the nearest enemy ship. It rocked to the side, trailing smoke, and fell behind the others. Drones zipped past the cabin, moving in tight groups, scanning for weaknesses and deploying small counter-missiles. Jalen covered his ears as the sound of war exploded around him. He couldn't breathe for a moment. Everything was too loud, too bright, too fast. But through it all he saw her, Alira, standing like a statue carved from steel, unmoving. The enemy ships circled tighter, trying to break the defense. A second wave of plasma fire hit the shield. This time it flickered. "They're testing us," Alira said. Finding cracks, Jalen turned to her. "How long can your shield hold?" "Long enough. Unless they send the Wraith class." "What's that?" Alira looked to the far horizon. "Trouble." The next moment, a large dark shape moved from behind the rest of the enemy fleet. It was unlike the others. Sleeker, silent, blacker than space. No bright lights. No visible weapons. Just a single glowing red eye at its front, pulsing slowly. The Thrax's soldiers went still. Even the machines paused. One of the commanders approached Alira. "Do we engage the Wraith?" Alira hesitated. "No, not yet." Jalen looked up at her. "Why not?" "Because if we fire first, it locks the treaty. Then they can use forbidden weapons. We must wait until they do." He watched the Wraith ship hover quietly above the fields. His chest tightened. "They're stalling," he said. "Yes," Alira replied. "They want you to panic. But they don't know you." Jalen looked at the giant army behind him. These weren't just soldiers. They weren't here to take orders from a king or emperor. They were here for him, because of one choice he made, one night, one act of kindness. He stepped closer to Alira. "If they attack again, don't wait." Alira looked at him surprised. "You're sure?" "Yes," he said. "Protect the others. Protect this place." She gave a single nod. Then she turned to her forces and spoke loud and clear. "If the Wraith class fires, engage with full force. No mercy." The soldiers roared back in perfect unison. The Wraith ship paused above them, unmoving. Then, without warning, it fired a black pulse into the sky, not at the cabin, at the sun. The light dimmed. The temperature dropped. A shadow spread across the land. Jalen's breath froze in his throat. "What did it do?" "They've begun their final strike," Alira said. "This is not just a battle now." The sky went dark. "It's a war for everything." The sunlight was gone. The pulse from the Wraith ship had blocked it, turning day into night. The ground grew cold. Plants wilted. The wind no longer carried warmth. Even the birds had vanished, as if nature itself understood what was coming. Jalen stared at the sky. He had seen war in stories on old screens and old books. But this was something ancient. Something worse. The red eye of the Wraith ship pulsed again. "They're trying to freeze us," Alira said. "Drain our warmth. Slow our reactions. Will your people survive it?" Jalen asked. She looked at the frost already forming on her armored shoulder. "Barely." Jalen looked at his cabin, so small, so old, and felt anger rise inside him. This place had never hurt anyone. It was just quiet, simple, a place of peace, and yet it had become the center of a galactic storm. A spark flickered near the edge of the field. Then another. Then 20. Then hundreds. The Rahl ground forces had arrived. Dark figures in skeletal armor walked forward in lines. Some were huge and animal-like. Others looked like shadows given shape. Their weapons were strange, more like living things than tools. They made no noise, no speech, just a steady march toward the shielded cabin. Alira raised her sword and pointed toward them. "Hold your ground," she said. "Do not let them pass." The Thraxis army formed a wall around the home. Shields up, weapons hot. A ring of glowing energy surrounded Jalen's land now, humming with quiet power. He turned to Alira. "What happens if the shield fails?" "They'll take you," she said. "And they will not be kind." Jalen gritted his teeth. "Then we don't let them." Alira placed her large hand gently on his shoulder. Her armor was cold from the sky's darkening, but her touch was steady. "I have sworn to protect you," she said. "But that's not the only reason I'm here." Jalen looked at her. "What do you mean?" She paused. For the first time since the battle began, she looked unsure. "When I was wounded, and you helped me, I was not just broken in body. I was ready to give up everything. I had lost friends, lost faith. But you, a stranger, gave me hope again." "I didn't do anything," Jalen said. "I just helped." "That was enough," she said softly. "You reminded me why I fight." A sudden explosion cut through the moment. The first raw warrior had reached the edge of the defense line and thrown something, an orb made of black crystal. It hit the energy shield and cracked like glass, but instead of shattering it, melted into the shield and weakened it. More orbs followed. The shield began to flicker. "Alira!" shouted one of the commanders. "We can't hold much longer." Alira raised her blade high. "Form Tier 2 ranks. Prepare for ground assault." Jalen stepped back toward the cabin, but stopped. He didn't want to hide. He didn't want to run. Alira looked at him. "Stay close. But if the shield falls, run for the cellar." Jalen shook his head. "No, I'm staying." She gave him a strange smile. A sad one. Then she turned toward the enemy. The raw forces screamed a high, horrible sound and charged as one. The vanguard met them with thunder. The battle had truly begun. And at the center of it all, Jalen stood in front of his tiny home, watching a giantess fight to protect the peace he once took for granted. The battlefield had changed. The once green land around Jalen's cabin was now covered in ash, smoke and cold dust that looked like snow. But it wasn't snow. It was the remains of drones, machines, armor, and lives lost. The sky stayed dark, the warmth stolen by the enemy's weapon, and the wind carried the sharp scent of war. Alira fought like nothing Jalen had ever seen. She moved fast despite her size, cutting through enemy lines with her glowing blade. Each swing knocked down 3 attackers. Her armor deflected plasma, blades, even poison darts. She roared orders to her troops while protecting the center. The home. His home. Jalen stood behind the shield line with 2 vanguard scouts guarding him. He had refused to hide. His legs were shaking, but he didn't care. He had seen Alira fall to one knee 3 times already, bleeding through cracks in her armor. But each time she rose again. For him. And she wasn't alone. Other giant warriors joined her. Some were larger than her, others smaller. One had silver skin and no eyes. Another wore armor made of firestone that glowed red under the dark sky. They had all come for her command, but now they stood for him too. "She must have called them from the stars," Jalen whispered. "They answered because of you," one scout replied. "No one has ever made Alira kneel. Until you." The shield cracked again, and this time it didn't repair. The Rahl had brought something new. A massive beast. Part machine, part bone, with long claws and a mouth that pulsed with energy. It charged at the defense line with a scream so loud it made the birds fall from the trees. The Thraxis warriors rushed forward to meet it, but even their strongest struggled to stop it. The beast swiped through 2 mechs, crushing them into metal chunks. Its body glowed with stolen heat. It fed on the cold, growing stronger. Alira saw the beast and ran toward it. "No," Jalen shouted. "It's a trap." But she didn't slow down. She leapt into the air and brought her sword down on the beast's head. It cracked open with a flash of energy, but it didn't die. It roared and slammed its tail, throwing her across the field. She crashed into the dirt, rolling through debris and smoke. Jalen ran. The scouts tried to stop him, but he broke free. He rushed through smoke, jumped over fallen armor, and ran to where Alira had landed. She lay half buried in the soil, her chest plate broken, one arm bleeding. "Alira!" he shouted. She opened one eye. "You weren't supposed to leave the cabin. You weren't supposed to die." "I'm not dying," she said, but her voice was weak. "Just resting." Jalen grabbed her hand. It was cold. Around them, the Rahl beast was turning back, ready for a second charge. The Thoraxis warriors struggled to regroup. One of them tried to shield the area with a barrier, but it was too late. Jalen stood in front of her. The beast saw him. It charged. Alira tried to push herself up, but her arm gave out. "Run," she said. No. He didn't move. And as the beast came closer, something happened. A strange glow lit up Jalen's chest. A warm golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The same light that once powered Alira's sword. The beast slowed. It saw something it didn't understand, and for the first time, it hesitated. Alira stared at him in shock. That light, how? Jalen didn't know, but something ancient had awakened inside him, and it wasn't afraid. The golden light from Jalen's chest grew brighter with every step the beast took. It didn't come from a weapon. It didn't come from armor. It came from him. The raw beast stopped moving. It let out a low sound, confused, angry, and maybe even afraid. Its claws dragged lines in the dirt. Its tail twitched. Alira, still on the ground, watched in disbelief. That energy. Only the ancient bloodlines could carry it. It's not possible. Jalen didn't understand. He looked down at his own body. The light pulsed from the center of his chest, spreading in lines through his arms and down his fingers. He felt no pain, only warmth, as if something deep inside had finally woken up after sleeping for centuries. The enemy beast roared and lunged again. Jalen raised his hand, not to fight, but to block. The moment the creature crossed into his reach, the golden energy burst outward in a flash that struck like thunder. The shockwave knocked the beast into the air. It flipped backward and crashed into a pile of fallen debris. Silence fell. Alira pushed herself up on one elbow. Her eyes were wide. "You have the pulse," she whispered. "What is it?" Jalen asked, shaking. "What's happening to me?" She sat up slowly, wiping blood from her lip. "We thought the ancient energy had been lost. It was only spoken of in war songs and myths. A force passed through touch, through care, through choice. It only wakes in someone pure." Jalen blinked. "Pure? I'm just a farmer." "You showed kindness when no one was watching," she said. "You didn't expect reward. You didn't demand loyalty. You simply helped." "I don't know what to do with it," he said. "You already are," Alira replied, smiling softly. Across the battlefield, the Raal forces had frozen. The beast didn't rise. The red glow in its eyes flickered and went out. Thoraxis commanders watched Jalen carefully. Their scanners beeped softly, measuring his energy output. "It's spreading," one of them said. "All warriors near him are healing faster. Armor recharge levels rising. Drones recalibrating instantly." Jalen looked around, confused. "I didn't mean to do anything." Alira got to her feet and stood beside him, resting her hand gently on his shoulder. "That's what makes it powerful. The pulse doesn't belong to conquerors. It belongs to protectors." Just then, a distant flare rose into the sky. Bright green. Alira's expression darkened. "That's their signal. They're calling for the soul collector." Jalen frowned. "What's that?" She turned to face him fully. "Something worse than war machines. It's not here to fight. It's here to take..." "Take what?" "You, or anyone who holds the pulse." Jalen felt a chill run down his back. The ground began to hum. A portal opened in the sky, huge and dark, shaped like an eye. Inside it, a massive shape floated downward. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a person. It looked like a living statue made of black stone, surrounded by shadows that flickered and whispered. Even the Raal backed away. Alira grabbed her sword tightly. "No one survives the collector," she said. "Not unless..." She paused. "Unless what?" "Unless the one it wants commands it instead." Jalen looked up at the sky again. The thing was coming, slowly with great purpose. It didn't need speed. It knew they couldn't run. "You said it follows the pulse," Jalen whispered. Alira nodded. "Yes, then I'll face it." Alira grabbed his arm. "No, if it touches you..." Jalen shook his head. "I've run out of choices. If this thing wants me, then I need to know why." She stared at him, torn between fear and trust. He looked back, calm now. "Stay with me," he said. Her grip tightened. "Always." And together they turned to face the collector as it descended. Slow, silent, and ready. The sky was silent as the collector descended. It moved without wings, without sound. A massive shape, dark as space, drifting down through the clouds like a falling god. Its body wasn't metal. It looked carved, smooth black stone marked by deep runes glowing faint red. Its face had no eyes. Just a circular mark in the center that pulsed slowly. The air around it bent. Warriors on both sides fell to one knee, not from loyalty but pressure. The ground itself trembled as if the world feared what was coming. Alira stood firm, though her knees shook. "This is not a machine," she said. "It's ancient. It doesn't obey leaders. It obeys the pulse." Jalen stared at the floating giant. "Then why is it here?" "To take the pulse," she said. "Or to end it." The collector hovered just above the battlefield now. The Raw troops backed away. Even they wouldn't go near it. The Theraxis stood their ground, forming a circle around Jalen, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Then the collector's runes flared. A low sound rang out. Not a roar, not a voice, but something deeper. A vibration that entered bones and thoughts. Everyone stopped moving. It turned toward Jalen, and then it spoke. "You hold what is not yours." Jalen stepped forward. "I didn't steal it, it just woke up. You are unshaped, untrained, unworthy." Alira raised her sword. "He saved me when he didn't have to. That makes him more worthy than any empire I've served." The collector turned toward her. "You are bound by blood debt. Your voice is not clean." Jalen clenched his fists. "Then test me." The collector paused. "You offer yourself?" "If it ends this," Jalen said. "If it protects them, yes." The air shifted. Slowly, the collector lowered until it stood on the ground, towering over all. Taller than Alira, taller than the Rahl ships, it stepped forward. Each movement echoed like thunder, but its blade did not rise. Its hand stayed at its side. Jalen stood still, not running. The collector raised one finger. "Touch," Alira shouted. "No," but Jalen reached forward. The moment their fingers met, light exploded. Golden and black energy spiraled around them. The pulse met the ancient force, and for a moment, time stopped. Jalen saw memories not his own. Worlds lost, empires burned, warriors kneeling. He saw the first bearer of the pulse long ago, alone on a mountain of ash. He saw kindness spark where war failed. He saw one truth. The pulse didn't come from power. It came from choice. When the light faded, Jalen fell to his knees, breathing hard. The collector stood still. Then slowly, it knelt. It bent one massive knee and lowered its head. "Command received." Alira gasped. "You claimed it?" Jalen looked up, confused. It listened. The Raw forces froze. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and fled. They had never seen the collector kneel. No one had. The Theraxis soldiers stared in shock. Some bowed. Others simply stood in awe. Alira walked to Jalen and helped him up. "You didn't win by force," she said. "You won by being who you are." "I don't feel like a winner," he whispered. "I feel tired. Even giants rest," she said, placing a hand over his heart. The collector remained still, waiting silently behind him. Jalen looked at the battlefield, burned, broken but still standing. And for the first time since the war began, peace didn't feel like a dream, it felt close. The battlefield was quiet. The Rahl forces had vanished, either retreating into the dark sky or surrendering to the silence. The Theraxis warriors stood in place, their weapons lowered. No one cheered. No one moved. They all watched one thing, the collector kneeling in front of the man it came to destroy. Jalen still felt the warmth in his chest. The glow had dimmed, but it hadn't faded. The pulse was part of him now. He could feel the energy like a second heartbeat. But more than that, he could feel something else. A connection to the people, to the ground, to the quiet. Alira stood beside him, eyes sharp, armor dented, skin bruised, but her gaze held only pride. "You changed everything," she whispered. Jalen shook his head. "I didn't want this. But you chose it anyway," she said. "And that's what makes it real." The collector rose, its massive stone body stood tall again, but it didn't attack. Instead, it turned toward the rest of the battlefield. "Awaiting instruction," it said in its deep, distant voice. Jalen looked up at the giant. "You follow me now?" "I follow the pulse," it answered. "And you are its living form." Jalen stepped forward. His hands trembled, but he spoke clearly. "No more attacks. No more killing. This land is free. This war ends here." The collector's runes flashed once. Then it stepped back, still and silent once more. Across the hills, Theraxis soldiers lowered their shields. Drones returned to base. Mechs powered down. For the first time in days, no enemy appeared on the horizon. Alira turned toward the remaining troops. Our duty has changed, she said. From protectors of one to builders of peace. One of her commanders stepped forward. He is no longer just a human. He is our center. What shall we call him? Jalen blinked. I'm just Jalen. No, Alira said. You are the keeper of the pulse now. I didn't ask for that. No one ever does, she replied. But you earned it. He turned and looked at the cabin behind him. Still standing. Slightly burned. Its roof dented from energy blasts. But it was still there. It had survived the war, just like he had. Just then, a small group of villagers from beyond the forest arrived, walking carefully through the field. They had heard the battle from far away, but waited until the silence came. They looked around in awe at the giants, the machines and the collector itself, but they didn't kneel to it. They walked past the war machines and stopped in front of Jalen. One old woman stepped forward and handed him a single flower. Thank you, she said. Jalen took the flower gently. I didn't do it alone. You led when we needed you, she replied. And sometimes that's everything. Alira smiled, her eyes softer now. You could rebuild this land, she said. With the pulse, with the people. With us. Jalen looked at her. You'd stay? Her voice was quiet. If you ask. He didn't speak for a moment. He didn't need to. His answer was clear in his eyes. Behind them, the collector turned to face the stars. The final enemy watches from afar, it said. But they do not strike. They fear the pulse, Jalen nodded. Let them watch. We'll show them what peace looks like. And for the first time, the pulse inside him felt calm, but one final choice still waited. The war was over, but Jalen didn't feel like a hero. He stood barefoot again on the same patch of dirt where it all began. His cabin still stood, with smoke stains on the walls and one corner patched with scrap metal. Around him, Thraxis warriors helped rebuild the land. The fields were being cleared, trees replanted, drones lifted broken debris like feathers, but Jalen's heart was somewhere else. The pulse inside him had gone quiet, not gone, just resting. He still felt it like a gentle warmth in his chest, but it no longer burned. It watched now, waited. Alira stood beside him, not in armor today, but in a soft cloak of gray and silver. Her bruises had healed. Her sword was at her side, not in her hand. For the first time, she looked less like a giantess of war and more like a person. Still powerful, still proud, but softer. She looked at him. They ask if you'll build a city here. Jalen chuckled softly. I'm not a king. They'd follow you anyway, she said. I just wanted quiet. Then let this land be a quiet place, she replied. But make it strong, safe, yours. He looked around. The villagers had started returning. Children ran through the dirt with sticks pretending to be soldiers. A group of young warriors trained beside the hill, learning peace through discipline. Even the collector remained, silent, still, standing watch at the edge of the valley like a sleeping mountain. It had not left, but it did not move unless Jalen spoke. What happens now? He asked. You choose, Alira said. He paused. And you? She lowered her head for a moment. I was born for war, trained to fight, not feel. But you changed that. You reminded me what it means to protect, not for duty, but for love. Jalen turned to face her. You don't have to leave. She looked at him, really looked. Then say it. Jalen took a slow breath. Stay. A simple word. But it changed everything. Alira smiled the same way she had that day when she first knelt, when the army waited. And he was just a man with a house. I will. The sun began to rise, warm and golden, pushing away the last cold of the wraith's shadow. Birds returned to the trees. The wind moved through the grass again. The cabin would be rebuilt, but the memories would remain. The place where a giant knelt not out of fear, not for conquest, but because of a simple kindness. And now, instead of armies waiting for orders, there were people building a home. Together. The pulse didn't belong to kings or empires. It had found its home in the heart of a man who never asked for power, and the galaxy would remember the one who never raised a sword but made giants kneel.